Part 1. The Folding Chair Girl. I never asked to be the favorite. I only wanted to be seen, but in my family, attention was a currency reserved for the golden ones, and I was always just the background. Not the tragedy, not the triumph, just the filler between someone else's applause. My name is Alana Cross, second daughter, the polite one, the helpful one, the one who could disappear without anyone noticing and somehow still be asked to do the dishes. When I showed up at my sister Callista's birthday party that night, I knew exactly how it would go. I arrived early, as always, gift wrapped just right, outfit tasteful, smile gentle, posture upright. I had learned over years how to blend in without shrinking entirely. But still, they managed to find a way to make me smaller. I was seated by the cooler, between a leaking bag of ice and a stack of trash bags. Literally. My name wasn't on a tag. My parents didn't greet me. Just a brittle smile from Mom and a distracted wave from Dad as he topped off his plastic wine cup. The music was elegant, the lights were soft, and I was positioned just out of reach of dignity. It wasn't an accident. It never was. And then Callista, God, she was radiant in sequins, took the mic. She made a toast to herself, of course. "To 30 years of fabulous," she beamed, her voice sugary sweet. Her fans clapped like they were hypnotized, but right before she set the mic down, she looked right at me. And let's not forget my baby sister Ilana, who's always been great at folding chairs. Laughter erupted like it was some inside joke. Even Dad chuckled, his deep, familiar laugh. The one I used to chase when I was little. I smiled. Not the kind that reaches your eyes. The kind that holds your pride like a piece of glass in your mouth. Sharp, dangerous, and silent. No one noticed the water bottle condensation seeping into my sleeve. No one offered me a new seat. That chair, next to the cooler and garbage, was exactly where they thought I belonged. Somewhere useful, out of the way. But here's the thing they never saw coming. I've been building something. In the dark. Quietly. Deliberately. And tonight, they would finally see. Part 2, what they didn't know I owned. The string lights above me blinked like stars pretending to care. I stayed seated. My arm damp from the tablecloth. My pride blistering beneath the weight of 1,000 paper cuts my family never noticed delivering. Across the yard, Callista floated like royalty, sash cinched at her waist, laughter bright and choreographed. Every part of her party sparkled. Every inch of her world looked like it had been styled for a magazine shoot. The tables were draped in white and gold, and a quartet played delicate background notes, soft enough not to overpower Callista's laugh. And me? I still smelled like lemon wipes and hot plastic. A woman in a satin jumpsuit leaned down next to me. "Aren't you Callista's assistant or something?" She wasn't mocking me. She genuinely didn't know. I nodded with a practiced smile and looked away. It wasn't the first time. I'd spent most of my adult life being mistaken for someone who worked for the people I actually employed. And I never corrected them because I didn't need them to know yet. I glanced across the yard again. There was a string of photos strung up with tiny golden clips. Callista at 5, spinning in a tutu. Callista at 22, tossing her graduation cap. Callista at her wedding. Callista at her first marketing award gala. Frame after frame of celebration. Not one photo of me. Not even from the group events we both attended. As if I were allergic to light. I used to wonder if I'd been adopted, or a clerical error, filed into the wrong family folder at birth. But no, I wasn't a mistake. I was just inconvenient. When I was 12, my birthday landed on Callista's ballet recital, so my mother said we'd combine the celebrations. "Make it easier," she said. That meant Callista got roses and applause, and I got a melting ice cream cake with both our names scribbled awkwardly on it. She twirled. I watched. The cameras flashed for her. I smiled in the background, always out of focus. That day, someone gave her a bouquet of peonies. I got a book with the price tag still on. During the group photo, I stood beside her, hopeful, thinking maybe for once I'd be seen. My mother frowned and said, "Honey, can you step to the side? The lighting's better without you." That was the first time I realized I could disappear from my own story if I stayed quiet long enough. But I didn't stop hoping. That was the unbearable part. I kept hoping. In high school, Callista got private tutoring and dance intensives. I got grocery lists and weekend chores. At 18, she got a cherry red Jeep. I got a congrats card from an aunt I barely knew. No cash inside. Not even a signature. They thought I had no ambition. They didn't know I'd already opened my first business bank account. They didn't ask. It was easier to assume. 7 years ago, I made my first investment. Quietly. A logistics firm in Chicago. Then a distressed content distribution company. Then I created a shell corp, which acquired a controlling interest in a national marketing agency. The same one Callista now worked for. I never corrected her title when she told people she ran campaigns. Because I didn't need to. Because I signed off on those campaigns. Because I declined the one she was bragging about that night. I still have the memo. Lacks originality, high duplication risk, flag for ethical review. Her manager renamed it, polished it, and sent it upward again. It landed back on my desk. I let it pass. Not because it was good, because I was watching. My father once told me, "You take things too personally." He meant it as a dismissal, but I take things precisely. Later that evening, a young server passed me with a tray of desserts. She paused, eyes locking with mine. "I know who you are," she whispered. I blinked. "Sorry?" "You're the VJ Grant," she said. 2 years ago. I was one of the recipients." "Thank you, ma'am." She didn't smile, she didn't linger. Just nodded and moved on. That moment hit me harder than Callista's insult. Because she knew. Not the family's narrative of me, not the quiet Alana they left out of every slideshow. She knew the woman behind the grants, the one quietly funding opportunities for kids who'd grown up just like me. Unseen. Across the yard, Callista was still shining, posing with her coworkers. Among them, a junior associate I'd personally spared during layoffs. Her performance wasn't stellar, but I saw something in her, something worth keeping. I bet she didn't even know. Not yet. But she would. The current was shifting. They had spent years making me the assistant in my own life. But I had rewritten the entire org chart, and the real storm hadn't even arrived yet. Part 3, the day the truth walked in. The quiet was the first thing I noticed. A stillness had crept over the party, too subtle to name but too distinct to ignore. Conversation slowed. Laughter softened. Like the wind had changed direction and the trees knew something the people didn't. Then I heard it, the sound of a car pulling into the gravel drive. A sleek black Tesla came to a gentle stop just beyond the string lights. The front gate opened. Out stepped Marcus Lang, CEO of the parent company that owned the firm where Callista worked. The same firm I quietly controlled through layered holdings and untraceable trusts. Callista gasped. "That's my boss," she whispered, patting her hair with the back of her hand, suddenly aware of her appearance. "Oh my God, what is he doing here?" She didn't know. I did. Marcus walked past the champagne tower, past the string quartet, past Callista herself, without a word. He didn't slow down, didn't even glance at her. And then he stopped in front of me. "Madam Cross," he said softly, sliding off his mirrored sunglasses. "Wasn't expecting to see you here." "Not Alana, not Miss, not Ms. Madam." I looked up at him. "I wasn't expecting you either, Marcus." He leaned in slightly, voice low. "Do you need a ride after this? I need to brief you on the Morgan acquisition. If we move fast, they'll fold by Q3. I nodded once. "I'll find you later." He stepped back, calm and unfazed, and walked on. Behind him, Callista stood frozen. Her champagne flute trembled slightly. I saw it. I saw her brain working to reconcile what she'd just witnessed with the story she had built about me all her life. It didn't fit. She didn't understand, not yet. But she would. I stepped away from the cooler, the exile throne I'd occupied most of my life, and walked toward the dessert table. My father intercepted me halfway, burger in one hand, red Solo cup in the other. He smirked. "Well, look who's still playing secretary," he said, his eyes flicking to my flats. "Callista says you're... what's the word? Comfortable. Comfortable in your little role." I didn't bite. I didn't need to. His words were nothing new, just recycled barbs wrapped in smugness. He took a bite of his burger and added, mouth full, "You know, I helped your cousin get a grant last year. Used your LLC, women-owned, looks good on paper." I froze. "You use my business name?" I said, voice low. "Relax," he said. "You weren't using it." That's what he believed, because that's what they always believed. I leaned in just enough for my words to be heard clearly. "You used my identity again." He laughed like I'd just told a joke. "You always were sensitive," he muttered. "That's why people overlook you." I didn't flinch. "I don't get overlooked," I said. "You choose not to see me." And then I walked away. Deliberate, measured. Every step a boundary I was finally setting in motion. Callista's voice rang out again near the fountain. She was telling the same story. The marketing campaign she took credit for. Rehearsed confidence. Same punchline. Same spotlight. "I think like a CEO," she said, raising her glass. "I see the big picture." Yes, Callista. The big picture I painted. The one I declined. The one you stole, scrubbed, and tried to sell as your own. Marcus stood beside me again. "Do you want to do it now?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Just one more moment." I walked to the serving table and placed a thick manila envelope on the pristine white linen, right between the shrimp cocktail and the sliced figs. Callista's eyes found it instantly. "What's that?" she asked, her voice falsely bright. I didn't raise mine. I didn't need to. "Proof," I said. She stepped forward. "Proof of what?" I didn't answer. She knew. Somewhere behind the curated sparkle and the sips of praise, she knew. "You think this makes you better than me?" she hissed. "No," I replied. "It makes me honest." "You're just jealous." I smiled for the first time all night. "Then why are you the one trembling?" Her hand twitched like she wanted to slap the envelope off the table, but the crowd was watching. They were watching her. And worse, they were starting to see me. The narrative was crumbling. Marcus cleared his throat. "Thank you for signing off on the transfer, Madam Cross. It's official." Callista's head snapped toward him. "Transfer?" I turned to her. Calm, measured. "You'll be moving to the Tempe office. Smaller team, less pressure. A good place to reflect." The crowd stilled. Someone coughed. Another adjusted their tie. My mother sat hard in a chair behind us, as if the ground beneath her had shifted, and she no longer knew what was solid. Callista stood there, stripped of the pretense. A queen without her court. "I always knew she was the smart one," someone murmured behind me. I didn't turn to see who said it. I didn't need to. Part 4. I don't need their chairs. I didn't want applause. I didn't need gasps or drama. I just wanted the lying to stop. When I turned from the table, leaving the manila envelope behind, I walked not in victory, but in clarity. That envelope didn't contain revenge. It contained truth. And truth, once placed in full view, doesn't need to scream. It just waits. I passed the folding chair by the cooler, the one they had saved for me as if it were still my place. The symbol of all the years I had been quietly shoved to the margins. I didn't even glance at it. I had outgrown the need to fit into a space that was never built to hold me. Behind me, the party resumed, but not as it had before. It stuttered like a record skipping in a silent room. My father stood by the buffet table, still holding his burger, now forgotten in his hand. My mother sat stiff in her chair, arms crossed, her face pale and unreadable. Callista didn't speak again. Her words had dried up in the heat of exposure. And in their silence, something began to shift. Not just in them, but in me. For years, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, stayed humble enough, succeeded quietly enough, they'd finally see me. I thought love and recognition were things I had to earn. But standing there, alone yet whole, I realized I didn't need to be seen by them anymore. I had already seen myself. 3 days passed, no calls, no texts, no last-minute attempts to spin the story, just silence. But this time, the silence didn't ache. It felt like peace. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office before my assistant finished her latte. "Good morning, Ilana," she said, placing a folder on my desk. "The Morgan acquisition call is at 10. Your team is prepped." I nodded, sliding on my reading glasses. "Thank you." Later that day, during our quarterly meeting, a young intern hesitated beside the window seat. "Would you like to sit here, Miss Cross?" he asked. I glanced at the chair. It reminded me too much of the one by the cooler. Nice enough, but clearly not meant for someone in charge. I stepped past it and pulled out the chair at the head of the table instead. "I think I've earned this one," I said softly. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and helped me adjust it. That afternoon, Marcus stopped by my office. "Callista resigned," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Said there was a misalignment in leadership values." He smirked. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even angry. I didn't want to ruin her. I never had. "I just wanted the truth to matter," I said. "It does," he replied, "because you made it." Just before he left, my assistant handed me a small white envelope with no return address. Inside was a folded note card. "Thank you for seeing someone like me. You gave me hope. R." It was from the young server, the one who had called me ma'am while the rest of the room whispered nobody. I tucked the card into the top drawer of my desk next to my father's old watch. One reminded me of time lost, the other of what I chose to do with mine. Weeks later, I was invited to a cousin's wedding. My name was printed in gold foil next to my mother's on a front row seat. I walked past it. Not because I was bitter, but because I no longer needed to be honored at someone else's table. I had built my own. I found a quiet seat by the window and watched as the ceremony began. They still didn't know how to include me, but that was okay. I knew how to include myself. And in that moment, surrounded by a family that still didn't understand me, I finally felt something I had spent years chasing. Home. Inside myself. Part 5, I built the room. Healing doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It comes quietly. In a morning without dread. In a chair you choose for yourself. In a moment when you no longer flinch at your reflection in someone else's eyes. A few months after Callista's party, I found myself at another family gathering. My nephew's birthday. A casual affair this time. Backyard, balloons, pizza boxes, kids screaming in delight. No champagne tower, no quartet, and no one knew how to treat me now. Callista didn't make eye contact. My mother barely asked how I was. My father offered a brief nod and walked away like I was an awkward email he wasn't ready to open. But none of it stung anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was clean. A cousin pulled me aside later in the afternoon. "You've changed," she said. Her voice wasn't accusatory, it was curious. Like she couldn't quite figure out what had shifted. I just smiled and said, no, I just stopped asking to be allowed. It wasn't that I no longer loved them. It was that I had finally loved myself more. I had always tried to fit into a narrative that never made space for me. A daughter who didn't dazzle, a sister who didn't sparkle, a woman who was always useful but never worth celebrating. But now I knew something better. I didn't need their script. I had authored my own. A few days later, I was at the office late, finalizing paperwork for a mentorship initiative, the same grant program that had changed that server girl's life. I added her name to the advisory board. She didn't know yet. She would. I walked to the window. The city buzzed beneath me. So many people, like me, had been told to stay quiet, to be good, to take the seat by the cooler and be grateful. But here I was, not just in the room. I had built the room, furnished it, lit it, for people like me, for women like her. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't performing resilience. I was living it. That night before heading home, I opened the top drawer of my desk again. The little thank you card was still there. So was my father's old watch. I picked them both up, one in each hand. One told me how much time I lost trying to be seen. The other reminded me that I'd never stopped being worthy. I slid them both back inside gently. Then I turned off the light and left my office knowing this. I didn't just take my seat at the table. I became the table.